For the Huskers, and now Northwestern's coming to town. Not as bad a team as most of us thought that they would back when all that scandal was going on with Pat Fitzgerald, and it looked like it would just come off the rails. And my goodness, there's no way this team's going to win a game in the Big Ten. Well, they've not only won a game, they've actually competed in most of the games and looked okay, and they're a serviceable group. But Huskers should still, if they take care of business, be the better team on Saturday, Greg. But Matt Rule was at the podium. Anything in particular stand out to you this week?
Well, yeah, we did talk to Matt Rule yesterday, and I mean, we did find out, how much the tremendous respect that Matt Rule has for Pat Fitzgerald, and really praised, what they've done after, the school parted ways with him. They're playing their hearts out right now and really giving it 110% every day. And, just like you said, the team that you didn't even expect to win a game, same record as Nebraska coming into this game. So, Northwestern's been playing very well and has surprised a lot of people. So it's not going to be an easy pushover game, especially, a lot of personnel there that remembers last year in Dublin when Northwestern, took the Huskers down in the trenches. So there's a lot of chips on shoulders right now for, the veteran Nebraska players in this game. And I expect it to be a really solid effort coming out by Nebraska here on Saturday. At 2:30 Central on Big Ten Network, by the way.
11-point favorites. You got to like it. And Luke Reimer back, so that's going to be huge. And then still got, Deshaun Singleton out, stuff like that. So some positive and a little bit of negative, but Malachi Coleman, excited to see him too. It's going to be fun to watch him in more action because he's going to be a starter this week. So that's it's going to be interesting to see how he kind of develops now that he's kind of thrown in the fire a little bit. But again, got some confidence in that last game, making a catch there. So that's going to be big going forward and just kind of getting that camaraderie with them. Rule still saying that Sims is going to be ready at any moment. So, working, he might have that deal where he might have to work with multiple quarterbacks. So, little trial by fire and trying to get experience, in a tough situation. Hopefully that'll make him better next year. We got a little bit more stability at the QB position and stuff.
Are those your Monday press conference notes that you took yesterday?
Yeah, I took a few notes here down. So that way I can keep track of what's going on this week going into it. That's the only way to really know, what their thoughts are and stuff. So
we got to hear from 9 players today and both coordinators as well. So yeah, there's been a lot pumped into us here the last 2 days after a week off, basically. So
yeah, there's a lot of notes. Yeah.
That means you should have a lot to talk about, Greg.
I got nothing.
That's why I took notes. See, that's the difference. I took notes. You didn't.
I don't pay attention while I'm there.
I can see that. It's much easier to be able to rewind and pause and stuff like that while I'm watching on YouTube.
It was a bye week. What do you want to talk about?
Well, Northwestern, and then the stuff coming into the Northwestern game is kind of important. Huh?
There we go. That's why we've got Bradley Locker showing up. Bradley, how you doing?
Hey, what's up, guys? I'm doing well. Thanks so much for having me on.
Absolutely. Appreciate you being here at the Voice of College Football. That is Justin up top with me. He hosts our post game, and you got Greg right next to you. He's on Husker Online. This is Bradley Locker from Inside NU on SB Nation. Bradley, tell us a little bit about this Northwestern football team, because basically everyone wrote them off as probably a 1-11 team this year. That Wagner win, okay, probably that, and that's about it. And with the debacle that was the Pat Fitzgerald end of his career at Northwestern. It just didn't look really good for a team that was 1-11, of course, last season, and then considering all the turmoil. So obviously, Ben Braun's done a heck of a job pulling this team together.
Yeah, there's no doubt that David Braun has been a really strong positive force for this unit, which you talked about. I think going into the season, expectations were really at the floor before everything that happened in July. The team lost 4 players to the NFL draft, a lot more talent to the transfer portal, and it seemed like there weren't a lot of answers of, oh, where does Northwestern football go from here? Pat Fitzgerald was really spiraling as a head coach, did not really have any sort of solutions to kind of rallying his troops, figuring out the discrepancy between practice success and actually doing well in a game. And of course, team won 1 game last year against Nebraska, but it was a game that was very zany in a lot of ways. I mean, I think even in the Northwestern circles, we kind of talked about that game last year as, did that really happen? Was that a video game simulation? Was that just a figment of our imagination? So that game was definitely a little weird. But I think this year's team for sure has shown some noted improvement in a lot of areas that were question marks. Ben Bryant at quarterback has definitely been a positive element to this team, has had good composure, toughness back there. He's actually a little banged up, so I'm sure we'll get into that going more into the show. But Bryant has been good. The receiving core has been good with Cam Johnson and Bryce Kurtz. AJ Henning, the Michigan transfer, has come over and definitely made an impact with his top-tier speed and athleticism. Defensively, too, it's still a unit that's kind of trying to find its footing, but guys like Xander Mueller, Coco Azuma, Devin Turner have had pretty good years, and I think especially defensive line-wise, the unit's been a little more cohesive than anticipated. Of course, still not really all year there yet, offensive line, defensive line, and David Braun still has 6 games to kind of prove himself to Northwestern and to the fan base, but I think he's won over the players. There's a little doubt about that, and the fact that Northwestern has tripled its win total relative to last year at the midway point is definitely a good thing to see.
I'd like to get in one follow-up, and then I'll cut Greg and Justin loose to size up the matchups with you. But you mentioned Ben Bryant coming in from Cincinnati, and I got to say one of the more shocking developments this season was, although not a whole lot of people across the country were watching this game, to see that Northwestern, probably the most unlikely team in the Power 5 at that point, to put up 21 points on what is typically an airtight Minnesota defense, to pull out that game was like, wow, that obviously is the high point of the season, to win a Big Ten game against a team that's has been much better than you, and to do that with a 21-point comeback. And Bryant throws for 404 touchdowns, and of course, Bryce Kurtz has an amazing game. That was obviously a huge triumph for this team.
Yeah, there's no doubt that game was really kind of magical. Going into the fourth quarter, it seemed like there was no chance Northwestern was going to win. Even at halftime, it was the first game on campus in Ryan Field where students were in attendance, kind of a weird quirk because of Northwestern's quarter system and the late start starting in late September. So students had departed Ryan Field pretty much by halftime. It was a major deficit. And then all of a sudden, Northwestern just started making more clutch plays on defense. I kind of broke it down on Inside and You, just some of the 10 plays that led to Northwestern coming back. And we haven't really seen a lot of those situational open field tackles from Northwestern linebackers, defenders, anybody in a very long time, especially against a running back like Darius Taylor of Minnesota, who has just been an absolute stud for the Gophers. And then offensively, Bryant and Kurtz were unstoppable. There was a drive where Kurtz, I think, caught 3 passes for either 60 or 70 yards, and everybody in the stadium knew where the ball was going, and Minnesota couldn't do anything about it. Kurtz and Bryant were just totally in the zone, and also, again, been an eternity since we've seen quarterback-receiver chemistry like that in a single game, in a single quarter. And even that overtime play, the tight end leak where Charlie Mangieri went out into the flat, Ben Bryant worked to the right, back to the left, found him wide open for the touchdown. It was an awe-inspiring game from Northwestern. The fans stormed the field. It wasn't too impressive of a contingent that left. Maybe 500 to 1,000 people ran onto the field, but it was a definitely defining moment for this Northwestern football program, which hadn't won a Big Ten West game at home in 3 years. David Braun's first conference win. And there's no doubt, as you noted, that's the zenith of the season so far. You could kind of view it as a fluke that, it took Northwestern a 21-point heroic comeback to get a Big Ten win. So whether or not that can proliferate more and Northwestern actually puts together 4 good quarters of football is a big question going to the second half of the season. But yeah, that game had a pretty special feel to it. There's little doubt.
Yeah. I don't know why
I guess my question
Baltimore
is,
is my
what's
favorite.
Meg Bryant's health coming into the Saturday?
Sure. So Bryant did not play against the Howard Bison last weekend, or 2 weekends ago, I should say, because of what's believed to be an upper body injury. And he left the game against Penn State, where he just got absolutely crunched kind of every single dropback. I think it was half of his dropbacks he experienced pressure, which is an alarming figure for Northwestern. But Bryant left that game, did not play last week against the Bison. And then going into the bye week, it kind of seemed like Bryant was going to be on track to return. Everybody figured going as much, because Braun kind of indicated post-game after Howard on the 7th that, yeah, Braun was anticipating Bryant coming back in that game. But he kind of had a different attitude on his Monday press conference yesterday when he was asked about it. He said A.J. Henning and Jack Louse, the receiver and quarterback respectively, were practicing and on track to play. But for Bryant, he didn't say Bryant was practicing. He said, and I quote, he was progressing, and that the team would see how he was continuing to progress. So definitely an air of uncertainty there. Northwestern fans, I think, are a little alarmed by that because there's a very big drop-off, as was evidenced in that game against Howard, between Brendan Sullivan, the backup, the junior who started, I believe, his 5 games last year for the Wildcats, versus Bryant, kind of the grizzled veteran with good composure, arm talent, has been pretty accurate for most of this year. So if Bryant does not play, I think that would swing things a whole lot in Nebraska's favor. But I think most of us on the media side of things still expect Bryant to play. Some people kind of chalk it up to some gamesmanship from Braun. He hasn't really been one to do much of that this year, maybe because he understands the position he's in and the need to be candid. But regardless, we're going to have to find out in pregame warmups on Saturday from Lincoln, and that's going to be pretty telling.
Yeah, and that's what really sticks out to me is that I was wondering if it was gamesmanship, because obviously Nebraska right now is preparing for at least 2 different guys, maybe 3. So if it is gamesmanship, then Coach Baum's he's got it going.
I think the biggest question that I have is, what do you think is going to be the game plan? Because naturally, the run game hasn't been super efficient with 3.1 yards per carry, and then also just allowing a lot of pressures. So what do you think the game plan will be? Because, Nebraska's, pass defense has been better. But do you think that they are still going to try to, establish a run game at all? Or do you think they're immediately going to try to attack through the air?
I think it all depends on who's playing quarterback against the Bison. When Brendan Sullivan was under center, Northwestern, I think, had either 46 or 48 runs and only 18 pass attempts. And of course, you could attribute that to just playing an FCS opponent, dominating at the line of scrimmage, but that didn't really happen. The Bison stacked the box a lot and played the run pretty well. But I do think that if it is Ben Bryant under center, Northwestern is going to try to be a whole lot more balanced. The Wildcats under Mike Bajakian definitely still want to try to establish a run game. You talked about it. It's been a big struggle this year. I feel like Braun gets asked about it almost every single Saturday and every single Monday. Well, the run game has not gotten going. What are you guys doing to modify things in that department? And he's kind of talked about just getting solid gains on first down, second down, celebrating even a 1 or 2 yard gain. But I think it comes back to the offensive line, which has really been a low point this year for the Wildcats. You talked about the pressures they've allowed, not a whole lot of consistent success run blocking wise either. And Porter doesn't really have elite burst or ability to hit the hole. He's more of a bruising running back, shake off 1 or 2 defenders. But I would expect Cam Porter to get 10 to 15 carries in this game, no matter who is under center. He hasn't cracked 90 yards. Maybe we see a little bit more of Joseph Hyman II. He is a much more fast and quick hitting running back, more elusive in the hole too. Maybe even a guy like Anthony Tyus III. But I do think Northwestern is going to try to run. The problem is if Northwestern doesn't get a whole lot in the run game, then you let this Nebraska defense kind of pin its ears back and maybe start to send some pressures. But Nebraska or Northwestern rather will definitely try to run the ball. How effective is the big key. Yeah.
And, I haven't been able to watch a ton of Northwestern. So Xander Mueller stands out. What do you think, how important is he to this pass secondary and with Heinrich Harburg not really having the best, completion percentage and stuff like that? Besides him, who on the defense is really going to be a key contributor and somebody that we need to kind of look out for?
You touched upon Mueller. I think when I had the chance to kind of revisit his stats at the bye week, I was pretty fascinated to see just how good his production has been. I mean, 3.5 sacks, 7 tackles for loss. Watching him play, it's definitely seemed like he's taken a step up. He's cut down on the number of missed tackles. he's kind of flying around the football a little bit more and making plays. He had a really good interception against Gavin Hardison of UTEP on September 9th. But I think, I guess Mueller's not really a huge factor in pass coverage. He's just asked to be kind of an every down linebacker, even has substituted off on some third downs for a guy like Mackie Uline, the junior, who's a bit more agile in coverage. So I feel like Mueller is more of a hard nose, go out there and make a tackle, go sideline to sideline linebacker. In the secondary, I think it's going to come down to Garnett Hollis Jr. He is Northwestern's top cornerback. Comes in. He started a decent number of games last year after injuries to the Wildcat secondary. He's now in his senior season. He's been pretty strong on the year. Haven't really seen him yield too many big plays or long catches and runs. Also, I think Coco Ozma and Devin Turner, the two safeties that I talked about, they've been really good, kind of coming down in the box, making plays against the run game. And that's something they've needed to do because Northwestern's been plagued by missed tackles all season, even against Howard. I believe it was the running back James had a 64-yard carry with multiple missed tackles that kind of got the Bison back in the game just when fans thought Northwestern was going to start to cruise in that one. And also a guy like Rod Hurd II in the slot. I had the chance to talk to him kind of in practice today. And he's a really versatile player. He can hit hard. He can play in the alley. He can play in the box. He can cover pretty well too. So I think Northwestern's going to count on those guys to limit the aerial attack for the Huskers. But I do think Northwestern probably knows that Nebraska wants to run the ball. David Braun seemed keenly aware of Harburg and praised his legs a lot. And the last time Northwestern kind of faced a real running quarterback, and Riley Leonard from Duke did not go very well. He had 13 carries, 97 yards, and 2 touchdowns. And not saying that Harburg is necessarily the same caliber of runner as Leonard, but whether or not Northwestern can kind of stay grounded in its run lanes and not crash down too hard on zone reads is going to define a lot of this game.
Yeah, Harburg is clearly a really physical, runner of the football. So, especially, kind of like you alluded to with the tackling, that probably has to be, better. But still, if, a lot of guys are keen on the run game, as y'all probably know, our running back room is very, shallow as far as that goes. So, yeah, to put it lightly, we just know, a lot of injuries, not a lot of guys that, have a lot of experience, Emmett Johnson and those guys. So what do you think, how is the pass defense overall in comparison? I know you said a lot of those guys are run stoppers, but how is the pass defense overall? I have not had a fully chance to look into the pass defense. So, because again, our pass offense is very, very non-existent. Well, not non-existent, but, inconsistent. Also, we've been getting off to slow starts as well. Has that been a problem with Northwestern? And then kind of what's their game script look like? Are they better in the first half, second half? Because I believe that's going to be key too, because it just seems like Nebraska lately has been a second half team more so.
No, that's something that is a mantra that reigns familiar, maybe a little too familiar for Northwestern fans, being really good in the second half. That Minnesota game, Northwestern really did not establish much of anything in the first half. Whether it was offensive or defensive, a ton of missed tackles and big runs from Taylor, even Ethan Kaliakmanis. And Minnesota, I think, was up. I want to say it was 24-7 at halftime. And then Northwestern just stormed back in the fourth quarter in overtime. Kind of the same story against UTEP, one of the team's 3 wins. And this is a team that Northwestern ended up beating 38-7, but it was all tied 7-7 at the half. And then the team kind of flipped the switch coming out of halftime. Mike Bajakian's opening script was really excellent. So I think Northwestern wants to be a balanced team in all 4 quarters. It has not happened through 6 games. And I think David Braun, one area where we've seen definitive improvement compared to past iterations of Northwestern, is adjusting in the second half, whether it's just inspiring his players to go out and make more stops or I guess allowing Bajakian to create more fluid game plan. Northwestern has basically concretely been a better team in the second half this year. I don't necessarily have the point differential in front of me regarding the specific numbers, but the team has definitely made a lot more clutch and timely plays in the second half to allow it to get back in games. But in terms of the opening scripts, I think if Ben Bryant is the starting quarterback, I'd expect some throws kind of early to gauge how well Northwestern can attack this Nebraska passing defense, whereas the linebackers, of course, as you guys know, are a really strong unit. So, of course, Northwestern is going to try to do the run and maybe run up the middle once or twice, but it's a Northwestern team that hasn't really started super quickly. The Wildcats were up kind of early against the Bison, and then Howard stormed back late. But it's still the team's still seeking for, again, 4 frames of Northwestern Wildcats football. And until that actually is put on display, I don't know if anybody has faith that that's going to happen yet.
Got it. Cool, man. I appreciate it. Greg, I'll let you take it away with some questions.
I'm dumbfounded by what I just heard. So
Why?
nothing.
Why?
I don't know. I got nothing. Like you said.